And we are live. The adult beverages are poured, the kids are asleep. Welcome to New Dad Gaming, a show about fatherhood, gaming, and new fathers figuring out their gaming lives. My name is Trevor, and I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old.
And I'm Jeff. I have a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old.
We created an internet storm
We
the other
did.
week. It was like, I could not believe the participation we had on a poll we released over the
Yeah.
week.
Our
And
highest responded poll ever in
and
our history.
Yeah, and it was a great topic. And the best part about the topic is that we hit on it. At what point in the last podcast did we hit upon this gold mine of a topic? Hello?
Nope. Sorry. Cut out. Sorry.
Oh, no problem. I did or you did?
No, I
Probably
think I
me.
did.
Well, I could see you move the whole time, so I think that was probably me.
No. The audio. Okay.
Why don't we just take it fresh?
Yep.
What's nice too is for our premiere Twitch stream, we've already had our first
That's
technical
the best. That's the best
difficulty.
kind.
That's how we make it roll. Okay, so we'll
Sure, this is. Yep. Okay.
let's cut away from
It was on Wi-Fi.
right from the top. All right. Dun, dun, dun. The adult beverages are poured, the kids are asleep. Welcome to New Dad Gaming, a show about fatherhood, gaming, and new fathers figuring out their gaming lives. My name is Trevor, and I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old.
And I'm Jeff. I have a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old.
So we did it. We created a firestorm on the internet.
We did.
So what the best part is, so it came. We released a poll, and I think Jeff, it's probably about one of the more popular ones we've ever released.
Yeah. In our history of this podcast, it is the most responded to. So,
So
history.
that was great. That was great. What was funny about the topic is that we only hit upon it in the last episode of the show, so 182.
Yeah.
We probably hit on this topic, what, in the last 10 minutes? When did we finally start talking about it?
Yeah, it was in the tail end of the show. And then we decided, hey, why don't we find out what our audience thinks of it? Mm-hmm. So,
So it's awesome. So this all comes back around to a conversation we had about Final Fantasy and the cheats that come around with it. So now cheats being, you could call it cheats, you could call it quality of life improvements.
that's
if you
right.
like.
I think those are better. Quality
Right.
of life.
It's kind of a softer sell of it.
Yeah.
But for the releases, especially when they make their way to iOS devices or mobile devices, we are talking Final Fantasy 9, Final Fantasy 7. Some case this is the 2 times speed, 4 times speed, the God mode, invincible, level 99, always infinite or limit break. So this is on these re-releases, Final Fantasy, where it's taking away the grind. It's improving life. It's improving the speed. I think I captured that right, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are the modes that I will most use when hitting a remaster of a game I've already played. But yes, they are quality of life improvements.
Right, and the topic we hit upon was it's just the idea of what is a Final Fantasy game if not a little bit of suffering?
Right?
If it's not the grind, if it's not throwing your controller across a room as some awful boss one hits you, like what is it to beat a Final Fantasy game if you haven't put in the grind and the build and all those hours into it?
Well, it's not a Final Fantasy game. I think we had that conversation. You need to struggle a little bit to really feel that story, right?
Yeah.
So,
And the fascinating thing, so the audience was not just kind of split, they were exactly split down the middle.
dead
And
even.
Yeah, 48.1% both for if your kid wants to play a Final Fantasy remaster, would you let them use cheat modes? Yes, of course. And no, they need suffering. We had other at 3.9%, but it was utterly fascinating. And what I even found a bit more interesting was the fact that the nays, the ones I would say it's totally fine to let them use cheat codes,
Yeah.
they came out in the comments sections. Which, when you read some of the replies, I actually tend to agree with them, despite the fact that I tend to be a bit more on the yes. I'd like them to just, other way around. For those who said let them use cheats, those are the ones who said it's not a problem. Come to the comments. I would more say no. I'd prefer them not to. But the yeses, they had some really great points, and I think it's actually something you and I would both espouse. Honestly,
Yeah.
let me go ahead and read a comment, for instance, from Green Rob. I don't understand this dumb mentality of making your kids suffer because you did, especially with something like Final Fantasy. If it sucks too hard, it could turn them off of RPGs or even video games forever. Kids are impressionable. Just let me have fun.
Yeah, so we kind of touched on that the last episode where, we're trying to make this world better for our kids, right? So we
Leave
suffer
it
through
all.
it for them not to. So yes, totally agree that they should have, a little bit more fun with it, get their feet wet, and then take away those game modes as they can. But yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, I think. And let me do a couple more. So, friend of the show, Bill of the podcast "A Gamer Looks at 40," who we'll actually be discussing a little bit later in the show. Kids have their entire life, and that's at A Gamer Looks at 40.
Oh yeah.
Number 40. So kids have their entire life to push against friction. Let them have some easy breezy fun. I get you. That's good.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And then the if I had a kid, they would play games however they want, as long as it's not messing with someone else's gameplay in a multiplayer game. So that's kind of a combination. So I would correct it in a sense of how what we're trying to meet. I'm trying to think about if you have not spent the time inside of a Final Fantasy game, right? So if you put yourself back into Final Fantasy 7 for the first time.
Willingly, I will. Okay, let me be there. I'm just okay.
Yeah. Go back to your happy place, basically.
Yeah, that's right.
This is your headspace meditation moment.
Yeah.
But choose your favorite Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy 3, Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 10, not whichever one you like.
Yeah.
And remove all of the difficulty. You never lose to a boss. You never have to try to do some silly extra bit of effort to get a really cool weapon. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, let's try this a different way. Pokemon, right?
Oh.
You capture Pokemon and you press one button and it immediately evolves.
Yeah.
And it never dies. You beat every battle without any kind of issues. In some ways, is there any point in playing? It's not a game, and that it's more accustomed to a movie. No, at that
Yeah.
stage.
Well, like take the Pokemon example. It's kind of like Pokemon Snap at that point, where it's you're just kind of going along on rails experience almost, right? So in terms of something like Final Fantasy, if you had one-shot kills and God mode and stuff, there would be no need to summon, those 5-minute intro summoning creatures to get that last hit to bring down those hit points, and then you don't experience it. So I think my kid, if he played with those modes on, will come out with a very different experience, which is fine. But then when you relate it to your own, you're like, no, wait. There's all this like, trials and tribulations and grinding that we needed to, get to Yuna in Final Fantasy X, and before the world would end. And they're like,
Okay, so
I'd save her. So
slight spoiler alerts here.
okay,
But
hold on like a 20-year-old game, or
yeah,
are we gonna?
yeah, exactly. So for Final Fantasy 7, at the end you fight Sephiroth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yep.
So just like let me put a bit of a spoiler on that in case anyone here hasn't finished it. But without that struggle, like in going through that entire game, and the stories are wonderful, the locations are wonderful, like the mini games are great. So like I don't want to take away from the rest of it, but without, I don't want to say like the hours because I want them to waste weeks of their
No.
time to achieve it. But without the trials and the that passage of their rites, going through the rites of passage to get to that point, like how much more meaning does that final slash, does that final battle? Finally, I completed this game after I worked so hard to get here,
Yeah.
and then you succeed, and then you did it and you win. It's just, if anything, it's not so much I care to waste their time. If there was a way to fast forward the time and optimize it for them so that they can get to the end and still have that impression and that experience, I would. I'd love to save their time. Leave your kids in the better world, sure. But what I would want for them, and I think you might agree, Jeff, is like I want them to have that feeling. I want them to make that connection where all of their work pays off.
Yeah, and I think let's go to the example again of Final Fantasy VII. There's actually a part in Cloud's history, again, not really a spoiler, but you fight Sephiroth there.
What?
And he kills you no matter what, but you always think you have a chance, right? So you're low on health, you heal, right? You're like, no, I'm not giving in. So on God mode or anything else, it would just be like, oh, I guess the game just wants me to lose because, They can't
Right.
kill me, but you have to die because that's part of it, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
it's just one of those things where you're like, I don't really care about Sephiroth because I don't know, he didn't kill me that day, like he didn't strike me down. So again, like you were saying, it's just one of those things where if you don't experience that struggle, the end doesn't have that payoff or enough of that payoff, which again is fine, but don't. I don't know. My kid has been playing Final Fantasy VII Remake
Wow.
quite easily,
Huh.
and he's 8 and he's working his way through. So yeah, there's difficulty modes which are great, but no god modes. So he's doing well. He knows how to do it.
You know what it might be kind of adjacent to, which again, I think some of these people in a longer conversation, we might be able to kind of sway in that direction. It might be a bit adjacent to microtransactions,
Ooh,
honestly, because you're pumping core, or like you're constantly playing your Genesis or your SNES
yep.
and grinding, grinding, grinding. Great, I finally unlocked Reptile in Mortal Kombat.
Spoiler alert. Hold
Yeah,
on.
no, no, this is gonna
Yeah.
be a total spoiler episode.
Yeah.
But pick your poison. Choose whatever game you like. But you think about that grind where you play, 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 and then you finally unlock the character. You finally unlock the mode. You finally unlock the costume,
Yeah.
and you get to do it. And I think a lot of gamers openly, I don't think anybody would kind of go against this, lament the fact that a lot of times that's now reduced to a purchase.
Yeah.
So as opposed to I'm going to grind for a week and get the character. Yes, I did it. And not playing this character now is so sweet and so awesome. As opposed to $5.99.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And I think a lot of us as dads would pay that $5.99 um, to get it done.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can see you. I can see that relationship. And I think that's a good call because that's another way to look at it and see how it can, fundamentally, change the feelings of the game. So,
And I have a question for you. So I remember playing a game with my son and he was not hitting the jump. Like especially with Mario, he was having a real issue with the run jump. So
Oh,
hold
yeah.
B, press it, so get that extra distance. And he'd jump off, and I'm trying to slowly coach him. Okay, like this is how you do this. This is how you learn the skill, and you have to have the skill if you're going to play the game. But he was getting very frustrated, and I think I helped him maybe once or so. But he wanted me to keep helping him,
Right.
right? And I just saw this as okay, like this. So you're cheating in a way, and fine, you're going to get past this section, but you're you're not going to go any further. Like this is it.
Yeah.
Like you have to spend the time and learn it. I don't know if you've. Do you have anything like related with your kids where they're like, beat this for me, and you're like, if I would, but if I do, you're not going to be good enough in the next level. Like, you
Yeah.
need to learn this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll relate it back to Mario because we had that same thing where if I think my son was probably 6 at the time, it was just hard with that coordination of the run and jump. Like he just couldn't do it. And that's where I actually thought maybe the older controllers allowed for it a little bit more. I remember my thumb being able to like readily go across those two buttons, no problem. But my son wanted me to jump over some gaps, and I think it was one boss that he just couldn't do. And he's like, "No, Dad, you played this game. You know how to do it." I'm like, "Yes, I do. I
Yes,
will
son.
give you
I,
tips."
I am very
Yeah.
worldly and
Yeah.
amazing.
I will. Yeah. That's right. So, yeah, it's just some of those you let them struggle a little bit so that they get those tools and go into the game because it will get a lot worse. And then they're always coming to you, which is great. I don't mind them coming to me with gaming stuff. That's amazing. As a new dad, gaming, that is what I live for. That is perfect.
It's a moment
But
we've all trained for.
yeah, but then they get to a game like Zelda and they're like completely out of their league because they're like, what are you talking about? I have to put all these other techniques together along with healing and my weapons breaking and all that stuff. Like it gets more complex as you go up, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
it's one of those things.
Oh, so yeah, I said it was just fantastic to see the poll results, and the comments are really well founded. And again,
Yeah.
I would definitely agree with it because it was not. And I think it's kind of against us in the sense that we're not for kids suffering as far as games. I would very much like autosaves to be a huge thing. Remove lives. Like you don't need 3 lives for a
Yeah.
lot of games. You know what I mean? Like there's quality of life improvements that we can all agree upon. Is like there's no need to send kids back to some of the worst part of arcade gaming. But I don't want to rob them of the ultimate euphoria and excitement of truly beating something when you've earned it. I think, is that a fair assessment, there, Jeff?
I think that is. Nobody needs to go back to no continues and you go back to the start of a game. Because I've said those nightmares to my kids and they're like, they look at me like, what world did you live in? That sounds horrible. It sounds like the game developers were being bullies to you. I'm like, you know what? That's right.
Kind of. It's like, what did you do to the game developers? Why do they hate you so much? We'll never know, son. We'll never know.
Sit down. I'll tell you the tale of Battletoads. Hold on.
Oh, Tony. God, what a terrible pull. Oh, worst pull ever. But, all right. So we mentioned earlier in the show, Bill from A Gamer Looks at 40. Now, we were introduced actually because he had reached out, and I was very honored to be featured on his show. So he is launching an entire series. I really highly suggest everyone checks out his podcast. So you can find it through Twitter. And as far as his profile, if you want to find the podcast itself, Spotify, iTunes, all the major sources, A Gamer Looks at 40. Bill, so he'd reached out, and I was part of a few interview segments, and I'll be featured on a few of the episodes. It was just a blast to talk to. Had a fantastic time. As we got to talking, as you know, we here like to collect Gaming Dad moments, Gaming Dad stories.
Yep.
So it was, you know, what is a Gaming Dad moment for you? Do you have one that's kind of precious to you? And he sent along the following clip, and Jeff and I just really like the sentiment that he put together. So the Gaming Dad moment from Bill at the podcast, A Gamer Looks at 40.
My earliest dad gaming memory was probably when I was 7, and I first got my NES. And I remember getting it and running to the basement, begging him to hook it up, and he did, and very quickly realized I had no idea how to play this thing. So my dad, who had never really played a game up until that point, I think, maybe in the arcade or something, I don't know, he picks up the controller and he starts playing Rad Racer. And I was in awe. It's kind of like one of your dad hero moments where he's got the controller in his hand, he's making the car move, and the music's going, and it was a really fun experience. And of course, very quickly I picked it up. After that, he didn't really play games much with me. Every night, though, I'd be playing games around like 9 o'clock at night. He'd come home from work, get a bowl of ice cream, and then sit in his favorite rocking chair and watch me play games. And some nights he would say, "Bill, get off the game. I want to watch something." A lot of times he would just sit there and watch, and he was always fascinated by it, always really interested, even though he never joined in. When my dad passed when I was 17, one of the last pleasant memories I have of him is just that. Come downstairs, the bowl of ice cream, sitting in the rocking chair, and watching me play whatever game I happen to be playing. So, never had much direct connection when it came to games, but he was always in the periphery. He was always kind of in the background, which was comforting. And it was good to know he was there.
Yeah, so just a wonderful, positive experience, a positive memory for it. And I do think it's probably indicative of a lot of guys our age, like current fathers, where gaming was,
Yeah.
I don't think it was as popular a medium, so I don't know that a lot of our fathers played. So, like, Jeff, did your dad ever play games with you?
Oh, no, he wasn't.
That sounds like a hard no.
It was a hard no. Again, supported, what I wanted to go into, but he wasn't even there watching it. He was, he would not be in the same room. He just didn't get it. So I'm not sure if you had the same experience or.
Yeah, definitely. So I think, I remember my dad bringing home an original Atari, and this is, but I think at this time though, like Atari was like on the outs. So I remember, because I remember it being like a suitcase.
Oh,
with the system, and there's just like a bunch, like 50 games. So I think it was like someone had thrown it out at work and he brought it into the house.
I was about to say, like, it's either like he found it on the curb or at a garage sale, and he's like, "Hey, score!" Like,
of course, to us, it's the greatest moment of our lives.
Yeah.
So the games were like horrible for Atari for where we were. I remember we were playing blackjack. And let's call me 5 or 6. Yeah, right?
Here, kid. Here, learn this card game. Let's go to the casino after.
Okay. I'm not going to put it on him that he was telling me to play blackjack. So I'm going to see, hey kid, I'm going to see if you're a savant and you can make this family some money. No, it was more just like of all the cards, that's what we found. And then we kept playing it. And if you played a good hand, the dealer got upset and he made a really hilarious face.
Oh, wow.
So it's all of us just pressing buttons to try to get this character to make a funny face. And eventually he would, and everyone's like, "Whoa, we did it! We win!" And that's our game. He later would. We got a NES eventually, and there's one occasion I played one game with him my entire life. He's still with us, so I don't mean to do it in past tense, but we only ever played Blades of Steel
Oh, I love that game.
for the original NES, and he
Yeah.
was a hockey player his entire life, so he could kind of connect with that one.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
beat me too. I remember.
Whoa.
I seem to recall him beating. He just had that same dexterity, much like Bill's father, as far as was able to get it more than my young brain.
Yeah.
And there was, so I can remember my dad and gaming and thinking there was one game. But what's interesting is a lot like Bill, to a much narrower viewpoint, is it's very positive,
Yeah.
right? In a sense, like I remember that one experience I had with him, and it was a great memory. I laugh about it all the time. And then otherwise, much like you, and maybe you can go into a bit more detail. So like so your parents were supportive of, your dad was supportive of your gaming in so much as, well, the kid likes it,
Yeah.
so I'm going to support what he likes.
Yeah. I still remember he had to go on a business trip and he left for like a week to the US somewhere. And I guess on the airplane, they were giving out Dragon Warrior with a Nintendo Power subscription. So my dad, I guess.
No, okay, no, don't fast forward over that. So they were giving,
Yeah.
they were giving out cartridges
Yep.
on an airplane
Yep.
of the game.
Yep. So
Jeez.
you had to, I think you had to sign up for it. Like the first issue was free with the game, but you still had to subscribe, whatever. But he got this on the flight and he's like, "Oh, it is Nintendo that you have," right? Because you're like, I guess that goes through our minds now too, where you're like,
Yeah.
what system do you have? But no, I remember him bringing home Dragon Warrior and this Nintendo Power subscription, which I kept going for almost the entire run of that magazine. But I was so elated to have that was my first RPG, and just for him to bring home that game, and he didn't watch me play it or anything, but I think he enjoyed me, receiving it and opening it and popping it in, which was again. I have lived with that moment for almost 40 years. So it really stuck with me. And that is what I can remember of
Okay.
that one moment. So
I got another one. Do you have another, like, any other big story that sticks in your mind?
well, since my parents didn't really play any video games, I remember when they got babysitters for us, my babysitter would be the one to play games.
Oh
So
my God.
that was where I could game with other adults. Well, I guess teenagers. And this babysitter, I still remember I had Mario 3 at the time, and she cleared that sucker. Like that was not a problem. Not a problem.
Wow.
So that
What-
was.
God, what is it with babysitters being so good at games? Because I have a similar one. So I went to a house after school. It's not a daycare necessarily, but I don't know. I think you just call it illegal. Like, I don't know what the word is.
Just a
for it.
room.
But it was a different time, folks. I think there was money that was exchanged, and I went to a house after school.
Deep core memory in here somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah. And the older brother of the group that we were babysat on was one of those cool kids. Like, think back to when
Okay.
there was an older brother, and the older brother could do no wrong. He was your idol. Like, oh, that guy's so cool, right?
Just like that.
Just like that. He was so good at Mario for NES. Like, stupid good. So much so that this one time he's like, "Hey, watch this." He starts up a new game. He takes the controller. He turns it upside down,
Oh my God.
and he proceeds to beat the game flawlessly. Like, just,
What?
and I'm talking speed run before such a term even existed. And you could just imagine watching somebody speed run Nintendo when you're whatever 5, 6, 7.
Yeah. No.
Right. Already your head's exploded, but now take that explosion and set it on fire, because he turned the controller upside down. And I was mentioning a bit before, but I don't think he could have faked it, because thinking back, I almost feel like it was a lie. It's like there's no way he did that. There's no way he was that good, but I can't imagine any type of technology for him to be able to do it,
No.
like unless there was some like very elaborate VCR setup. I mean, now
Maybe it was, and this was his thing, like just to impress kids at this house or home that you went to.
I mean, we could do it now. Like, so we could just put on YouTube.
Yeah.
Hey, kid, watch me speedrun this. And you're just holding like any old controller, pretending to tap.
Yeah.
Wow, Dad, you're amazing.
Yeah.
Yes, son, I am.
Why not create that legend now and just break it in a decade? Be like, no. That was just a YouTube video on 2x speed. So
I was just messing with you. It kind of sounds like a modern version of the younger brother disconnected controller,
yes.
except it's Dad. We don't own this game, but I'm just going to put on a YouTube video and give you a disconnected controller and pretend you're playing.
Well, maybe that's what this guy did. Maybe he was using a different controller, and that was just player 2 controller, and it wasn't plugged in. He's like, yeah, look at me. And underneath, he's like, what?
I suppose there's some way to do it, but like, man, okay.
Blew your mind.
God, I was just, I absolutely shocked. Like, I think that stayed with me for weeks. And heck, even here we are on the show, some 30 odd years later,
Right.
It's still stuck. Like, how did that kid do it?
It's all boiled to this point.
Yeah. So another small story. So the reason I thought this is entirely unrelated
It's
to
all
gaming.
coming out. It's all
Yeah,
coming out. Let's
this
do
is this is a
All right.
therapy session, real quick. This is utterly unrelated to gaming, but
Okay.
excuse my diversion. So the reason I stopped going to this place was I was kicked out.
What?
Yeah, so I was kicked out of this illegal daycare
Okay.
because they had a sprinkler in the backyard. And, like, hooray, like everybody loves a sprinkler. Everybody likes to run around. This would be a great time.
Yeah.
So I go out there and I'm jumping around the sprinkler and I trip or I misjudge a jump and I break it, like just destroyed their sprinkler. I was like, nuts, that's too bad. We're playing with a neighborhood kid. And it's like, oh, your sprinkler broke. Hey, come play with ours. That'll be great. Run, slip, break.
What are you doing?
Second broken sprinkler. So I broke 2 sprinklers in this course of like less than a minute. I get like sent inside. They're furious at me, and then I just never went back to that daycare ever
Oh my
again.
God.
So I never
Wow.
got to see my idol. I never solved the Mario mystery of how he did it. And I
No.
could have. How would have my life turned out otherwise?
Well, don't break 2 sprinklers. Maybe go back in time and repair them.
I could have been. I could have been a modern day wizard.
You could have
Jeff.
been. Yeah.
Man, I was trying to watch clips of that recently, and it feels like I've seen the movie, but I could not tell you for the life of me scenes beyond maybe one, like besides a Mario being thrust forward on screen because our protagonist is now winning. I
Yeah.
can't think of any other scene. I don't know if you have any recollections of that movie.
Well, it's funny because I recently watched it with my kids as it's on Netflix and it's suggested.
jeez.
So we dove in and I said, this is a pretty old movie, so you kind of have to like check your expectations here.
You got to contextualize like what exactly is going on.
But it's a good connection back to the New Dad Victory. Was in that film they meet this person where, again, just quick brief of what's going on in the movie. The Wizard is like a 1988 film, and it's all about this kid that a group of friends, they want to make him feel better, so they go to a competition in California. They go cross country by themselves to try and win this video game competition. Anyway, along the way, they meet this one guy that's really cool. Maybe he's like the guy in the house that you went to.
Yeah, same dude, I guarantee it. Turns out he was an actor too. That's why
Yeah.
he's so good at it,
That's
practicing
right.
for the movie.
Yeah, that's right. He was just training.
Plot
So
thickens.
He had all these games, like 97 games, which again was mentioned very prominently in the film, which that apparently was a big deal. Nowadays, that's nothing. But he had a Power Glove, and he was playing Rad Racer, which kind of relates to Bill's story with his dad. And he just cleared the game, no problem, which intimidated the other kid that was going on to the video game industry. Anyway, my kids are watching this thing like, hey, Google, what is a Power Glove?
What's a Power Glove?
They had no idea. They're like, what is that thing? I'm not sure.
Can we get one?
Yeah, they were infatuated with it. Like, why would you play on your arm? I don't get it. How would it work? I'm like, I don't even know anybody that had one. But good story.
It's like, okay, all right. So hypothetical. would Nintendo ever start selling the Power Glove again for the Switch?
I don't know if they have to. Well, would you just make your own with like Nintendo Labo or whatever it's called?
You practically could, but I'm saying Nintendo could, with all the silly hardware and Labo and everything else.
Yeah.
Why would they not tap into that nostalgia? Just rebuild a Power Glove and sell it for $300.
I mean, it's total. I mean, if Nintendo's listening, again, this is a great trademark idea from New Dads. My kid did relate it to Ring Fit. So if they have a hula hoop with a joystick or a Joy-Con in it, then I'm sure they can create some sort of glove thing.
I bet it's coming up. We keep hearing rumors of the Nintendo Switch Pro. What is more pro than a Power Glove, Jeff?
Maybe it's a Power Glove.
Solved it. We'll call it here first.
that is
Nintendo's
great.
releasing a new Power Glove for the Switch. That's what the Pro is.
We're going to market this
Ship it.
right now. Just this episode revealed the Nintendo Power Glove. Remade.
Oh, great. We will end it there on a high note, and one of our classic future guesses probably going to come true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Power Glove in every home. Watch for it Christmas 2021. Perfect end to everything else going on. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. This has been New Dad Gaming. If you'd like to get a hold of us, you can find us at our website, newdadgaming.com, as well as on Twitter and Facebook at New Dad Gaming. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear a Gaming Dad story. Like, thank you so much from Bill from A Gamer Looks at 40. Links for that podcast and Twitter account will be inside the show notes. Please do check it out. If you have a similar story with your dad, with your kids, with a Nintendo Power Glove, we'd love to hear about it and get featured on the show. Just reach out to us on any of those socials or our website. Again, New Dad Gaming. If you'd like to subscribe to the podcast, it helps us a tremendous amount. If you do subscribe on any of the channels, and we'd really appreciate it. You can find us on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, any of the major podcasting platforms. We'd really appreciate a subscription, comment, and to share around as we try to get it to as many gaming dads as possible. Until next week, my name is Trevor, and I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old.
And I'm Jeff. I have a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old. And just because you became a dad,
Doesn't mean it's game over.
see you later.
See you next week.